Ask.
Welcome to United Parks as One Wellness Wednesday for June 21st, 2023. Our topic today is spiritual wellness. My name is Carla Robinson. I'm the Executive Director of United Parks as One. I'm here with Hajjah Dena Corbin and her special guest. Hajjah Dena is the United Parks as One Wellness and Wellbeing Navigator and is the guide for our wellness journey. Last month, we launched a new series of sessions on the 8 dimensions of wellness. Today, we're exploring our first dimension, spiritual wellness. It's nice to be with you again, Hajjah Dena. Let's get started.
Yes, it's great to be here. I'm so very excited. So we want to remind you about the 8 dimensions of wellness, which are the spiritual wellness, emotional, physical, community, environmental, intellectual, occupational, and financial, right? And now we're going to have a conversation with a friend of mine, Kazi, who I met a few years ago. And I'm just going to read you a short bio because he's very extensive. I'm going to read a short bio about Kazi. Kazi is a psycho-spiritual wellness coach. He's a medicinal or medicine movement instructor. I love that terminology, medicinal movement. Meditation and medicine guide and wilderness retreat leader, having led workshops and retreats in New York City, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. So without further ado, we're going to ask Kazi some questions. Let's see. Okay, so our first question, Kazi, is what is spiritual wellness?
What is spiritual wellness? Okay. That's a very poignant question for this time because it's something that you hear a lot, not with the wellness piece, but you hear people often say, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. And if you ask them, well, what do you mean by that? 9 times out of 10, you'll get a different question for everybody. Even when you go into the dictionary, you'll get a different answer. What is spirit? What is soul? They'll tell you each one is the same thing or there's something different. What I like to look at is the ancient meaning of the word spirit, right? Spirit comes from the Greek spiritus, which means breath. Breath. Does it really mean that your breath is spirit? I think what they're trying to imply is that breath is something that we all know we have. We can feel it. You know when you're not getting enough of it, but you can't see it, okay? You can't see breath, but you know it exists. You know it's there and you know that you need it. And there are many things that fall into that category, right? There's a number of things that we need. We have to have these things, but they're not necessarily palpable that you can put your hands on and touch. And so spiritual wellness is paying attention to and cultivating the parts of yourself that you don't necessarily see. It's not the physical body, but there are many things that we have to have, right? So if you think about a human being, besides food, clothing, and shelter, right, we have to have those things. They're must. But there's something else that a human being has to have, and that's affection. There's long time ago, I think it's back in the 70s, there were experiments done with little babies where they were separated from their mothers for, a good period of time. And they noticed that these babies weren't thriving, even though they were being fed every day, they were being cleaned, they weren't being given attention by anyone. No one was touching them, no one was kissing them, no one was holding them. And they their health began to suffer, because there are certain things that we have to have that are not physical, but are necessary, right? So this human interaction is necessary. Being part of a social group and social interaction is necessary for humans. This is all part of our spiritual wellness. The idea of breath itself is absolutely necessary. When we're born, if we're not breathing, old movies, but most of us here, we know this. You don't see it much nowadays. the old movies and old television shows, you would see the doctor smack the baby on the butt. So it would start to cry. And when you cry, you're going to breathe deeply. So breath is something that is very important. You find that in all of the traditions, like meditation traditions and the various yoga traditions, breathing is something that is very important. There are different breathing techniques that you can use that enhance your health and make sure that you remain healthy. If you're not breathing properly or breathing too shallow, like most people in the Western world do, we breathe very shallow. You breathe up in your chest. They're not taking deep breaths all the way into the belly unless you're exerting yourself, like running and things like that. When you start a meditation practice, one of the things that you learn is how to breathe deeply, all the way down into your belly, just like a little baby. Look at the little baby, their little stomach is going up and down, up and down. Not just chest breathing. Chest breathing you're still getting the air, but it excites you. When you see somebody that's upset, you see their whole shoulders and their chest moving up and down. We need to learn how to bring our breath down all the way into the belly, nice and slow and rhythmic, but deep, filling the whole diaphragm air, right? This relaxes us. It also gives us the ability to deal with stressors, the stressors that are in our environment. And our stressors nowadays tend to be, what's the word? Our stressors nowadays tend to last longer than our ancestors. If you think about being out on the savannah, you're in Africa and you see some wild animal that may be a predator, it may not see you. And you see it and you're hiding and you're waiting for it to go away, and it doesn't notice you and it goes away. And then you're like, oh, great, good, right? We, on the other hand, get a stressful idea comes into our head. Oh, I forgot to pay this particular bill. And now you're just ruminating about this for hours and hours and hours. It has a different effect on your body. The stress has a different effect on your body when you hold on to it and you're constantly thinking about it. You don't just have a little stressful moment and let it go, but we stay in these stress zones for, prolonged periods of time. This isn't good. It affects your health. Very often, stress, when held too long, becomes a trigger for weaknesses that we may have or predispositions. Sometimes we have genetic predispositions for particular ailments. It's the stress that triggers it if you're constantly in a stress mode. So breathing is one of the things that we use to calm ourselves down, to let the body know everything is cool, everything is all right, you're going to be fine. Even though something's going on, we're going to get past it. And so knowing how to breathe properly and how to relax oneself is something that we could all use. It would be helpful for all of us. Okay. So those are just a couple of ideas of spiritual wellness. Having a spiritual practice is another aspect. Having a practice. If you belong to a particular religion, usually you have practices, you have these, what I like to call power tools.
Hold that right there, Kazi. We're getting ready to move into the next question.
Oh, okay.
So hold that thought and answer this question with what you're getting ready to say, right?
Sure.
What's the difference between spiritual wellness and religion?
Okay.
Right?
Sure. Religion is a path to spiritual wellness. Okay. Religion gives us a particular worldview, which is necessary. We all have a worldview. We inherit it from the society we're in, the culture that we're in. Okay. And our worldview has a certain cosmology to it, right? The way that we see that things are ordered, that shows that there's order in the universe, which is important because we don't want to think that everything is just, you can't depend on anything and there's no way to tell if it's a good time or a bad time. Like, what are the things that we're looking for, the cues? Religion offers that But what comes with religions very often is that, this is my own personal opinion,
Okay.
prophets come, and the prophets come with a message. And they come with a message that is particular to the people that they're speaking to, the time they're in, the place they're in, right? It's appropriate to the time and place. Then the prophet eventually dies. No sooner than the prophet is in the ground and the body is still warm, the factions begin, you see. The interpretations begin, the priesthood. See, to me, it's not the religion that's the problem, it's the priesthoods that are the problem, because they're vying for power. Who's going to be in charge now? And then they break off into little sects. Every religion has its sects.
Mm-hmm.
These sects is what create the problem. They then come with the rules beyond what the original prophet came with. And everything has to now be according to what they're saying. It becomes like a power play. This is where, go ahead.
So in what you're saying and what you even said about spiritual wellness is more of a personal undertaking, and then the religion has that worldview and that particular order.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm trying to understand the difference between the two. Like, and a lot of times when you even see, like you said in the very beginning, when
Mm-hmm.
you look at spiritual wellness, there's different meanings, and it often says that it's not attached to any religious
Mm-hmm.
order. Do you agree with that? Do you there's a separation there? So what is the difference between the two?
Spiritual wellness can be attached to a religion. Every religion has
Right.
its practice.
Right.
Where it tends to go left is that the individual gets lost in the sauce, right?
Okay.
Because the groups that are now in power wants everyone to bow to their particular way.
Mm-hmm.
And every religion has this. They have every little group, and the different
Mm-hmm.
groups have their own way, and it becomes more of a control mechanism
Mm-hmm.
down the line. And so the individual doesn't get addressed. Where a spiritual program, a spiritual practice addresses the individual's needs. Each individual, not just physical, they have spiritual needs. It's something that's a little different than the other person, you know? I mean, if you look at something just as simple as personality, people have different personalities. And so if you learn what a person's personality is, it's easier to communicate with them and to communicate information to them that could help them if you know what their personality is. And very often part of the issue that they're having, that they haven't learned how to interact with other personalities.
Mm-hmm.
So there's certain individual things that are very important that the group practice doesn't address.
Right. So and then also, so it's a personal development and progress and journey as well, right? Wouldn't you say that?
Yes, exactly.
Personal. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for that. It's very enlightening. I'm enjoying our conversation and your answers. So the next question is, what role can nature play in our spiritual wellness? How does nature play in all of this?
Yeah, nature plays a very big role. That's another one of the things that is missing. You know, when you have religions, the emphasis is placed on the house of worship. The house of worship, whether it's the church, the masjid, the cathedral, what have you. And we separate ourselves from the outdoors and from nature. In fact, sometimes nature is looked at as being something negative or something evil, you know. The body is looked at as evil and negative in certain religions. But nature, nature is our home. This is where we've lived for millions of years that human beings have been alive. We've evolved with nature, not separate from nature. And so we don't realize that much of the medicine that we need is already here. We don't have to wait for men to create it. It's there. But we've separated ourselves from nature when we have, this is kind of what civilization is about. The word civilization, its root goes back to the term civitas, I think it is, which means cities. And we move out of the country into the city. Everyone comes to live in the city. That's where the jobs are. That's where the government is. This is where the cathedrals and churches are. Everything is in the city. And so we lose touch with nature where we lived every day, not just for our lifetimes, for generations we've been living with nature. And when we remove ourselves from that, we remove ourselves from a lot of the natural medicines that are already there. This is things that now are being discovered, rediscovered really, and from a scientific point of view, that the very trees have chemicals that are in them that when we're in nature, we're breathing this stuff in. And it has a medicinal value for us. But if you're in the city, not only are you not getting that, at the same time, instead you're getting smog, smoke and debris. There's all kind of little fine things in the air in the cities that we can't even see that we're breathing in all the time. And they're toxic to us. So getting out into nature or this is where retreat, the idea of retreat, comes from. Most churches or religious organizations, when they go on retreat, they go into nature. There for a couple of days. And you come back home. Everybody knows when you do this, you just feel different. You just feel different. It's not just the things that you did there with the group, it's being in nature. And so once again, nature is part of creation, and the creation is here for us and it's healing for us, but we have to spend more time with it.
Thank you. So it gets better and better. How does spiritual wellness affect other dimensions of wellness? All of the other dimensions that we talked about. How does spiritual wellness affect our emotional, physical, community, environmental, intellectual? How does that help?
Okay, good question.
Thank you.
There's nothing that's isolated in our lives. Everything is connected. It all has to be integrated. I always like going back to the original meaning of words. The word healing means to be whole. That's the original meaning, to be whole. And that means everything has to be integrated together, right? You just can't separate things and this is over here and that's over there. Everything works in unison. So to be healed means to be whole. We can't think that medicine, for example, go to a hospital if you want medicine, okay? If you want education, you go here. If you want to have a party and have a good time, you go here. The way that our society is now, everything is separate. And it's looked at as totally, this is on one side of the fence, this is on the other side of the fence. Everything has to be integrated together. And you find this a lot of times also in old religions, in spiritual cultures, old religions. They don't look at everything as separate. Everything is part of it. What you eat, how you worship, how you play, how you work. Everything has to come together. So when you make if you have a spiritual practice and it's just about Sunday or Friday or Saturday, it doesn't creep into the rest of your life, it's not going on all the time, then that's separated out. It's going to give you some benefit, but it's not going to give you the same benefit if it would when you see that everything works together. I don't know answering your question, but
oh no, that makes perfect sense, because when you started, I thought about the statement that I've made in the past is you can't get whole thinking in isolation.
Yes.
right? Everything is integrated. So thank you so much for that. And you said it, everything works in unison and integration. So our last question, what advice do you have for people who want to improve their spiritual wellness? What does that look like for people?
My first advice, the place I would say to start, is meditation. And the reason I say that is because at the end of the day, a big part of spiritual wellness is self-knowing, knowing yourself, knowing yourself beyond what you think you are and what you think you're about. You know, a lot of what we think we know is socialization, is things that we've just picked up from others. People say this and it sounds good and you go with it. You have to be able to sit with yourself and really hear yourself. You know, what are the thoughts that are always going through your head? What are the challenges that you seem to be going through all the time? You know, the lesson that hasn't been learned. They're the lessons that you learn, but it's the lessons that you haven't learned that's causing you, that's giving you problems, right? What is it that you keep going through over and over? You haven't gotten it yet. And if you can be quiet each day, separate some time just to be quiet and just to feel what's going on inside yourself, listen to what's going through your head without getting attached to it or saying this is right or this is wrong. What are these thoughts that just keep coming all the time, every day? What are your fears? You know, it's all there, but we don't pay attention to it. Once again, civilization has so much going on. And in this day and time, I mean, I'm glad I'm not just being born. Your attention span now is, right? Because there's always something to take your attention somewhere. You have to get away from that. You have to spend at least a little, if it's 10 minutes, just sitting with yourself, listening, feeling, and knowing how you react. The more you practice that, it then carries over into your life where you don't have to be sitting quietly, but you'll take notice. You know something? Every time I get around this particular place, I feel a little off. Or I get around these particular people, I feel a little off. Okay. And you shouldn't ignore these things. These are things that it's your body. Your body's going to tell you, I don't like this situation. Oh, I really do like this situation. But we ignore these things and we have that sense. There's the five senses, but there are other senses constantly telling us things. This is not too good for us. This is good for us. But we don't notice it because we're too attached to something else that's going on. Does that make any sense?
Absolutely. I was just thinking, as you were talking about the conversations that Miss Carla and I have had leading up to this conversation here, and it just confirms a lot of what we were talking about when, especially when you said people just need to sit and be still,
Right.
be quiet. And
Right.
doing that and taking it another step further, doing it in nature also brings a certain degree of awareness,
Right.
right? And then when you said, just really listen, right? And be able to feel and know when things are right or when things are not right. And I loved what you said about it's not always about the lessons that we've learned, but it more is about the lessons that we haven't learned that we keep going over and over and over. And when we have an opportunity to sit and listen, we will be able to find answers to those lessons that we haven't learned. So thank you so much, Kazi, for this enlightening, really, really, really deep conversation, and just the whole awareness of spiritual wellness. If you have some contact information, how can our viewers or listeners reach out to you so you can pour in them some more of this good information?
Sure, sure. The best way to contact me is by phone, and that would be 917-439-1895.
Okay.
Well, I'm also connected to Newark Center for Meditative Culture. We're presently located at Park Place, but we're going to be moving soon. So just you can find us on Instagram at Newark Meditation, and same on Facebook, Newark Meditation. You can find us there.
Thank you so much, Kazi. Thank you so very much. Okay, so and we want you to stick around for our next Wellness Wednesday post, which will be on July 19th. We'll address emotional wellness as we continue our series about the 8 dimensions of wellness. And thank you once again, Kazi.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kazi. I really appreciated your remarks about the importance of wholeness in our spiritual wellness. So I just wanted to add that as one of the things that stood out for me. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Hajjah Dena, for another session. And everyone remember that our Wellness Wednesday posts go up the third Wednesday of each month. Thank you for watching again. And remember to look for our next video post on Wednesday, July 19th. In the meantime, be well. And today I'll add be whole. And take time to enjoy yourself outdoors at a park, playground, garden, or other open space.